Another person that has been essential too is Elise. So I met Elise Bonafwa in 2007. She had come to Canada for our Canadian Fellowship Conference, and she was the international representative or the international coordinator for the ARE. And it was so great to have a representative in the ARE on behalf of international people. It was so awesome to know that she was there. And whenever any Canadian would go to Virginia Beach, or anyone from the world would go to Virginia Beach, they would always try to meet up with Elise. And so she did a fantastic job doing that. And I'll tell you a little bit about her background. Elise has a PhD. Elise has a PhD from Caltech in California in applied physics. So she is a PhD doctor. She's a very smart woman, and she could have gone into that field, but instead she decided to work for a much lower wage at the ARE doing international stuff. So she's really a woman of service, and she's been helping me contacting international people. So I just wanted to have Elise talk a little bit. Elise, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Great to see you, Elise.
Thank you. Well, John, I had asked you not to embarrass me, but you did. Thank you.
We love you dearly.
I love you too. So, do you want me to?
Please.
Say something? Okay.
If you want.
Well, thank you. Well, I wanted to first welcome everyone, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, from everyone in the world coming together for this wonderful first annual EDGAR CAYCE International Conference. And this is perfect for the theme of oneness. And as John said, we met at the Kingston conference, and that too, I would like to acknowledge as a very beautiful conference that people would come year after year, sharing in joy and excitement. And on the day that everybody was leaving, it was see you next year. And that was so beautiful. And I want to acknowledge the Canadian people who always have such a beautiful spirit. And I'm sure there are many of you on this call who have been to these Kingston conferences and they know what I mean. But anyway, and on that respect, I wanted to also acknowledge some people who are absolutely wonderful people and who've left an amazing legacy, both for the Canadian groups and the ARE, and that's Nancy and Frank Thomas. And I think Nancy will be on this event, but she's still going strong and helping and doing the outreach. So I really want to acknowledge all these wonderful people. And I must say that because I have been the ARE International Outreach Coordinator for 13 years, I've developed such a love for everybody in the world, and it's a very deep connection. And when we talk about oneness, this is what it is, to all be connected. Whether we agree, disagree, we see each other or not, we are all connected. And I'm so grateful that John and his team are putting this event together. And I'm just very grateful to be here with all of you. And actually, the oneness is actually a fundamental concept in the Cayce readings, and probably an underlying principle in the philosophy of EDGAR CAYCE. And when we say we are all one with God and one with all of creation, and sometimes it can be a little bit hard to grasp as a concept. And there is a kind of an analogy that I personally like. It's like waves on the ocean. And I'm sure many people use this analogy, but like we are waves on the ocean of love, of the ocean of presence, on the ocean of spirit. And there is actually a quote from Yogananda in his autobiography of a yogi that I wanted to share with you about that. And he says, the wave is the same as the ocean, though it is not the whole ocean. Each wave of creation is a part of the eternal ocean of spirit. The ocean can exist without the waves, but the waves cannot exist without the ocean. So I thought that was totally a good illustration for this thing. And if people would like the actual quote, I can easily put it in the chat later. But I have digressed a little bit, and I would like to go back to the international outreach, because what I would like to do in the few minutes that I have with you all is acknowledge some of the amazing ARE representatives and groups who have dedicated themselves, their time, their resources, their efforts to disseminate the Cayce work all over the world. And you will see many of them today talking about what they are doing, as John indicated. But I would like to focus on those who are not here, and essentially the deceased ones. And I would like to invite them right now as one. This is also another aspect, I think, of oneness, that those who are no longer on this earth plane can also be part of this oneness during this time together. And actually, the international outreach started at the time of Hewlin Cayce and Gladys Davis. So it goes way back. And as you know, Hewlin was a very strong person who could convince people to do almost anything. And as you know, he was the Apostle Andrew. And one person I would like to acknowledge here is George Bouloukos, who was the Greek representative for many years and had established a Cayce Center in a city called Tripolis near Athens. And he passed away in 2005. But he left many, many books translated into Greek. He was lecturing, he was doing all kinds of work for the Cayce legacy study groups. And now, of course, that he's passed, there is another gentleman, Nicolas Mamalis, who is a graduate from the Cayce Riley School, who is continuing the work but on a smaller scale. I also wanted to acknowledge someone who was very active in the Cayce work in India, Mr. Joseph, who also created a Cayce Center and was had remedies that he was distributing to people, and he was lecturing and had study groups, and he did that for over 25 years. Another thing that might be of interest to mention is that Hewlin Cayce was in touch with what is called the Universal White Brotherhood, which is a spiritual movement that was founded in Bulgaria at the beginning of the 20th century by a gentleman named Peter Denov. And they actually established a very strong group in France. And that was done by one of the followers of Peter Denov. His name was Omram Michael Ivanov. And this gentleman, Omram Michael Ivanov, actually came to ARE, met with Hewlin, they became good friends, and there are pictures of the two of them together. And the teachings of that Universal White Brotherhood are very much in sync with the Cayce work. Prayer, meditation, breathing exercises, music, and something that some of you may have practiced as panurhythmy. So anyway, this is also something that's part of the early international outreach. And actually, it's very interesting, that connection with the Universal White Brotherhood. And if people are interested, we can put you in touch with, the other people who are doing that. The other person I wanted to mention is Gladys Davis. Gladys Davis, who, when she passed in 1986, left Jeanette Thomas as the keeper of the readings. And Jeanette played a very important role in the international outreach at that time, because that was before the CD-ROM and the digital platforms. So people had to come to Virginia Beach to study the readings. And so she was the one, providing help for the researchers and showing them the vault and the archives and everything. So in that process, Jeanette was invited in different countries in Europe, and she helped them develop their outreach. And that was a lot in England, Germany, Northern Europe, Belgium, Czech Republic. And so she was very versed in the remedies, in the readings, and she could lecture on almost any topic. So Jeanette was very, very loved and sought after a person who helped tremendously the European countries. Since we're talking about Europe, I would like to mention, you'll hear probably Dr. Philippe Antoine tomorrow. And Philippe has been working with another gentleman in Belgium named Michael van Stinskist, who passed away a number of years ago. But they did a wonderful outreach both in Belgium and in Holland. And Philippe actually knows all the people that I'm talking about. So I hope he will be able to share some of his experience. He's a wonderful person. And also I wanted to give credit to another wonderful person who passed away in September of this year in Germany, Horst Gode, who was one of the founders of the German groups and study groups and translating books into German, including Search for God. So another amazing, amazing person. And one that many of you may know is Dr. Peter Schell, who was a chiropractor. He was from Switzerland, German Switzerland. And he came to the US, was trained by Dr. Riley, was an expert in the readings and the remedies. And he was traveling all the time to Europe to give workshops and train people. He also went to Japan, and maybe Yuki can talk about that tomorrow. And also he helped a lot. He was going like 2 or 3 times a year to Ecuador, to the Cayce Center there, to see patients and give workshops and lectures. And actually, Peter Schell passed in Ecuador a few years ago. So I'm sure he's listening to us now. And the final person I would like to mention is John Walsh. John Walsh was in the UK. He was an Irish man who passed away in 2009, living in England. And he was a good friend of Hugh Lynn. And he dedicated more than 30 years of his life totally to the Cayce work, starting study groups. He would go every night to a different study group until they were able to function on their own. He lectured throughout Europe, all the way to Portugal, and going to everywhere that he could to lecture and help groups. He created an Edgar Cayce Center in Northern England in a place called Durham, where he would hold conferences. He could distribute the Cayce remedies throughout Europe. John was a force for the Cayce work. throughout Europe. So he's a very, very special person. And actually, I would like to share a very interesting story about John. John was a school teacher. And once he was in a school in the worst area of London, a school where kids would fight all the time. And it was, they were back 2 or 3 or several years in class. I mean, very difficult situation. And he decided to apply the discipline concept of the study groups. So he didn't call that discipline. He would call that assignments. And so every week he would give the kids an assignment for the week that he would make it fun for them. And by doing that, after a couple of years, that school, the kids were catching up on their education, and that school became a model of a good school for London. So this is to be said for John's work and also the power behind the study group work. So there would be much to say about all these people and more, but I don't want to take too much time. And I just want to mention that the Cayce International Outreach is still going strong, thanks to all the wonderful people who are currently doing their volunteer work in different parts of the world, and with so much love and dedication. And in closing, I would like to share a comment that I heard in 2001 at the Euro Congress in Prague, in the Czech Republic. The Europeans had started to organize a European Congress every other year, each time in a different country. And so there was a group of an ARE tour actually going there with Americans, and Charles Thomas leading the group, and there were American speakers and local speakers. And what the organizer, Rick Pinard, he told me, he said, we have all these wonderful speakers, but you know what? We don't care what the speakers say. All we want is be together. And that really touched me, and I remember it to this day, because I think this is really the spirit of the international groups. The important thing is to be together and being one in love. So anyway, I'm sorry, but I want to thank you for listening to me and, and being patient, because my enthusiasm for the Cayce work and the international outreach is still the same. And I love you all. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Elise. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.